event today in the evening at the end of the food day. It's the first food day we had at the COP, which is amazing. We discussed, or we were running around, and we remember back in Glasgow and said it would be great to have a food day. And now we are here. And the topic of our session today is empowering agents of transformation, paths towards inclusive governments for sustainable food systems. My name is Martina Fleckenstein. I'm with our Global Food Program, leading on the policy work. And I'm very happy to have the discussion today, because here now in Dubai, I have the feeling food is all over. Yeah, we had the Emirates Declaration, where now more than 150 member states have signed. We have the non-state actors declaration. But the question is always, this will not work if we have a really good governance system. And I'm very happy to present our first speaker, Alexander Müller. He is the Managing Director of TMG Research, based in Berlin. And he will give us an introduction what and how food system transformation could be supported by a governance system. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Martina, for introducing me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. My keynote, and Martina has given me 10 to 12 to 13 minutes, is all about governance. And in order to introduce the joint work we are doing, I would like to start with something we all know, but this is for me again a justification why I think that food has to be at the UNFCCC COP. And you all know the figures. If you translate the amount of food waste the world is producing every year, it's 1.3 billion tons every year. 1/3 of all food gets wasted. If you translate this food waste into greenhouse gas emissions or CO2 equivalents, you will find out that alone food waste, if food waste would be a country, it would be considered the third biggest emitter here of CO2 emissions at the COP. So food waste should have a seat at the table when it comes to the negotiations on mitigation, because food waste is really a big, big topic. The work on food waste has started in FAO around 2008, when we had organized a big conference on the question how to feed the world in 2050. And there, the narrative was we have to produce a lot more. And we looked into what does it mean to produce more. And then we, for the first time, figured out how much food is lost in pre-harvest, post-harvest losses, and how much food is lost in the value chain and in our households. And as I said, it's huge. It's 1.3 billion. If you go to the supermarket and you buy 3 bags full of food, and on your way home you're losing 1 bag, this is the amount of food waste we are losing. This also means that 1/3 of all water and 1/3 of all land that is used for food production is lost. And Martina, from a nature protection perspective, how much land would we have for nature protection or for other purposes if we could reduce the amount of food waste? And therefore, it is very clear food, agriculture and food systems has to be at UNFCCC COP. Food has to be on the agenda here, also with another figure. In November, FAO published the 2023 State of Food and Agriculture, the latest report, and they were looking at something which has been ignored so far, the question of hidden costs of our food systems. Hidden costs of our food systems is something difficult to measure, something not so easy to understand, but there is a growing community that looks at, are we doing the economics right? And the result of this work, and also the result of other works that friends of mine have done over the last years, is that we have a serious problem with the economic valuation of our economic activities. Not only food, not only agriculture, but we are producing externalities all over the place. And externalities are hidden costs that are real, but they are not accounted for in our traditional system of accounting. And if you look at the food system, there is an estimate that today's global food system has a value in our accounting of between 9 and 11 trillion US dollars. It's difficult to assess, but it's a huge, huge value. And if you look at the additional existing hidden costs, you can see that this is this figure, that around 10 trillion of costs are hidden. So we are talking about between 9 and 11 trillion of the value of the global food system. And at the same time, there are hidden costs in the same magnitude. And if you try to break it down, where do the hidden costs come from? I have to briefly introduce the concept of the different capitals. So far in our standing accounting and in gross domestic product, we only look at productive capital, wages, investment in machinery, loans, payments for land, and. But what we ignore in our economic system is the important role of natural capital. One example, which is also very much tied to UNFCCC, is that over years, the atmosphere was considered to be free of value. So it was possible for the fossil fuel industry to emit over 150, 200 years CO2 and related emissions for free. There was no cost attached to it. And this was completely wrong, because now we know that with climate change, emitting CO2 generates costs. These costs have to be paid by future generations, by people in other continents, but nature is not for free. And therefore, the FAO report on true cost accounting was looking at the environmental costs of our food system. It was looking at the social costs of our food system. And it was looking at the health-related costs of our food system. And if we break it down, we can see that the biggest hidden cost of our existing food system are the health costs. And I'm not talking only about people being hungry, but I'm talking also about people being malnourished. And these health costs are so huge, they are 9.3 trillion. So the current food system creates hidden costs, and nobody knows how much 10 trillion are. So I would like to put it into perspective and using the share of GDP to it. On average, the food system has additional hidden costs of 10% of global GDP, 10%. This is a huge amount and you cannot ignore it. And if you look at different countries, you will find out this is not only a problem for the developed world, this is especially a problem for the developing world. Because some of these costs, and this is a breakdown, some of these costs are very high. There are low-income countries where the hidden cost of the food system amounts to up to 27% of their GDP. 27% of the GDP, and therefore unsustainable food systems, unhealthy diets, undernourishment are a big barrier to development. So it's not a debate that can only rich nations afford. It's a huge cost for rich nations, but for development, if we don't consider the negative impacts of unsustainable food systems, we are ignoring one of the biggest barriers to development. And you can see the share of quantified hidden costs to GDP. In low-income countries, relatively, it's the highest cost. And in high-income countries, it's on average 7, 8, 9%. And therefore, we are not only talking about a problem of obesity in my region of the world, we are talking about the impacts of unsustainable diets, unhealthy food, on development opportunities in developing countries. So the question is, we know that food waste is a problem with regard to climate change. We know that unsustainable food systems are a problem for development. We are all talking about transformation. The key question is how to do transformation. And here our joint work starts. We were looking at a multi-level system of governance. And what I would like to present to you are the different decision levels, what needs to be done, and how and who needs to do work. So we are here at the COP, so we are at the international level. We have very beautiful agreements, the SDGs to be achieved in only 7 years. We have the Paris Climate Agreement to be achieved in only 7 years. We have the latest agreement on biodiversity. We have an agreement on the fight against desertification. So at the global level, the targets have been set. At the national level, these targets have to be translated into national action plans. And we would like to look at how can these national plans be implemented. And therefore, if we don't consider the institutions, and the Rio Conventions are an example of it, if we don't look at the national food system transformation pathways are going to work, we will not be able to achieve the globally agreed goals. And from my perspective, in 2015, it was a big achievement when in the climate change negotiations, countries agreed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees or below 2 degrees. There's a political fight. But what never has been really considered is the question how to translate it. And it's even more difficult with food systems because the SDGs are providing a global framework, many SDGs and targets and goals and measurements and everything is fine. But if you look at what are the institutional requirements to translate them into concrete action at the national level, we are missing key players. And therefore, the message I'm going to present to you, or that is the result of our work, we have, and this is the example of the Rio Conventions, we have to look at UNFCCC, UNCCD and CBD and try to find out how they can support food systems transformation and how food system transformation is supporting the mission of the Rio Conventions. From my perspective, food systems transformation and Rio Conventions should be considered as mutually supportive. If you look at, and I'm going briefly back to the environmental impacts, the Rio Conventions will never be able to deal with the hidden costs of food systems with their current budget if they don't tackle the root causes of biodiversity loss. And we know that agriculture, unsustainable agriculture, is responsible for 60% of biodiversity loss, and therefore CBD needs to be a strong player in food systems transformation. And with our work on the architecture, we would like to strengthen the role of the Rio Conventions, of the national focal points of the Rio Conventions, and try to identify how Rio Conventions and food system transformation can work hand in hand. And therefore, we have developed in our report what we call the transformation protocol. Food systems are complex. Everybody agrees to it. Transformation of complex system requires a system where you analyze, where you start acting, where you do monitoring, where you re-elevate, and then look at the outcomes. And therefore, we are convinced that without a strong, transparent system involving all stakeholders, trying to create a platform where different views can be expressed and where we could go ahead in order to identify the best ways forward, we are not going to achieve the food system transformation required. And therefore, we are proposing something that you see on the right side, the activities, monitoring, reporting, validation, national policies and strategies, solution and implementation. And how could this look like? It's a circle. We propose a step-by-step approach. It doesn't make sense to go to the national level and to say, you have to transform your food systems. Nothing is going to happen. Therefore, we have to first evaluate what is the current status of food systems. We have to look at the triggers and needs and do a systems analysis, and then come up with ideas which are rooted in local realities. One size does not fit all. We have to look at what kind of ideas do we have, who are the major actors, what kind of partnerships do we need, what do we need to achieve, and then work forward toward starting action. I have been involved in several discussions about national transformation pathways. I like the idea. Several countries are doing it. but very often it is considered being a one-off opportunity. Bring a few people together, discuss and forget. This is not the way forward, because it has to be a serious activity where you, this is our step 8, look at monitoring and assessment. Where did we go? What are the unintended side effects? And then go to adaptation. Adaptation is not adaptation to climate change, but adaptation to what we have learned in this process of local realities. We have outlined this in 4 reports, which you can download, of course, for free on the website. And we try to develop a comprehensive understanding of food systems transformation. Let me stop with a very general comment. From my perspective, there are 2 major issues we need to look at if we want to achieve the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement. It's energy and food. Energy is, I think, in parallel to this meeting, a big debate going on. What does it mean for phasing out fossil fuels? How much reduction of emissions do we have? But in the end, energy is pretty simple. It is reducing emissions and going renewable. There's a lot of talk about it. You need a technological environment, but the way forward is pretty simplistic. Food is much more complex. We don't have one trigger where you could say, okay, if you change this, food systems are transformed. In the debate on energy, you have very few triggers. In food systems, they are culturally rooted. We have many food systems. We have global trade. And therefore, the complexity of working on food is much higher. But I'm convinced that we are not going to achieve climate change agreements, SDGs, but also the agreements we have in CBD, UNCCD and UNFCCC without making food systems as part of the solution. And therefore we are lobbying with this event to understand the need for a governance system. There are many vested interests. There are many powerful forces. The current food system has many winners. You only have to look at the balance sheets of the big trade commodity traders in 2023. This was a golden year. They've earned a lot of money because of the crisis. And therefore, I'm convinced that a participatory way to develop a governance system is the only way to translate the great and complex and challenging idea of food systems transformation into reality, and at the same time create alliances with people who want to tackle climate change, who want to preserve biodiversity, and who are fighting against desertification. Therefore, for me, the governance system has to be the foundation for collaboration among different sectors so that we are really able to achieve what we want to achieve. Thanks a lot. And if I have spoken too long, Martina, you can criticize me, but please afterwards.
No, stay here. I have some questions. First of all, this mic, it works. Yeah, first of all, thanks for the inspiring presentation, and also for really pointing out the hidden costs of agri-food system, which is here at the COP not a discussion, but I think it's really something. And I was really also shocked that the biggest costs are the health costs, which we always forget. And I think this is once again the nexus of food and health. We really have to have a deeper dive. And also I like that we have to really bring together the Rio Conventions, the land, the biodiversity, and the climate, if we want to implement. And we need a governance system. And that's my question to you. On the you mentioned the nine-step agri-transformation protocol. My question is, who are the agents or the ones who should work on this? Should it be a multi-stakeholder, non-NGO community? Is this a mixture? So do you have some thoughts also on how this could look like, and who could be let's say the driver or the initiator for this?
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Martina. I would like to go back to an international agreement on the right to food. It's, I think, 60 years ago, all countries of this world, except the United States, they didn't agree to this international covenant. agreed on there is a human right to food. And this human right to food lays out some important principles. And one of the principles is states have obligations. It's an obligation of states, and people have rights. And based on these two principles, I would like to set up a system which comes very close to, the two of us know it, the CFS, the Committee on Food Security, where you involve all stakeholders in their respective roles, but you have the state, the government, being responsible for food security. They have a responsibility. They have obligations, and therefore it's not just a multi-stakeholder platform. People say A and others say B, and the state says, oh, there's such a diversity, I don't know what to do. Therefore, this protocol needs to be led by those who have the obligations, the state, but it has to be based on multi-stakeholder participation in order to find out what are the steps forward. Currently, our foods, many people say, let me phrase it differently, our food system is broken. I disagree. It was never defined to provide healthy food for all. And therefore, the governance question has to come up with an idea where health of the planet, health of the people comes together, and we can ensure that food still remains affordable. What we have not seen in the SOFA report is the fact that for, I think, 2 or 3 billion people, healthy food currently is not affordable. And therefore, this has to be packaged together. But again, clear principles. We are the stakeholders. The state has obligations, and they have to manage this process, and they have to be accountable.
Okay, thanks. That's a lot of food for thought for our panel discussion now. And you could, now I let you sit again, but you could also step in. So I have 2 panelists here in the room, and I have 2 panelists online. It works, that's great. Let me introduce Manuel. First of all, Manuel, you are, and it would be good if you maybe take the two chairs here. That's good. Manuel Jaramillo, you are the Director General of Fundacja Vida Silvestre from Argentina. It's a partner organization of WWF, and I'm happy to have you here today. And my second panelist who is in the room is Wei Zhang. Wei Zhang is the Senior Research Fellow of IFPRI, of the International Food Policy and Research Institute. And happy to see my colleagues online. It's Nicole Pitta. She is the project manager of IPES Food, International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, so your topic. And Rafael Arantas, he is the advisor of the Secretariat at the Extraordinary Secretariat to combat hunger in the Brazilian Ministry of Development and Social Assistance, Family and the Fight Against Hunger. So happy to have both of you, and I hope you could hear me well. Okay, super, that works. We will have two rounds of questions. The first one is more on the broader picture, so sharing your experience and best practice on governance. So listening to you based on your background, and I want to start with you, Wei. Based on your research, what are the key factors that contribute to the success of a governance? Also maybe reflecting a little bit on what Alexander has just presented.
Can you hear? Yes, thank you. Great. Alexander presented on the international and national framework and protocol. So I think I can offer some ideas for operationalizing this idea of food system transformation governance at the local food system level. So this is actually a topic in which we're doing a lot ourselves, including literature review, conceptualization, concept proofing kind of work in the context of CGIAR research initiative on low emission food system, in particular our work package on living labs for people. So let me just, this is work in progress, but let me just kind of throw out our working definition for Living Lab for People first. So we define Living Lab for People as an inclusive and diverse space for people to co-design, test, demonstrate, and advance their socio-technical solutions and associated modes of governance within a facilitated organization structure. It's a very loaded statement. So here we're developing these living labs for people in 4 countries, China, Colombia, Kenya, and Vietnam, where solutions will be co-developed with food system stakeholders who are diverse with their information, their views, interests, mental models, their assets, and their relationships is shaped by the information access and power play. So the Living Lab approach has been around for about 15 years. Gained a lot of momentum as a user-centric testing technologies in real-world settings in Europe. And in recent years, this has been deployed in developing countries and in the food system context. And we're very explicit about people being in the center, not only as users, but also as co-creators of solutions and to whom the social outcomes really matter. We're developing a global level conceptual framework for this and implementing the approach in our countries where they all try to address very different questions in different contexts with just a wide variety of participating stakeholders. And the context is key, right? We'd like to have a global framework that's general enough and broad enough we can apply, but we also want this to be flexible, adaptable to local context. So it's not going to be a very rigorous template. And we are interested in a process of building longer-lasting relationship with our partners to address their objectives. And this Living Lab for People approach itself is being designed to sustain themselves beyond our project cycles through, for example, identifying local hosts so that our local national stakeholders can can continue these initiatives beyond the project. Because we believe this Living Lab for People approach having some promising potential to support food system transformation, we have identified some normative principles which could guide the way how we facilitate the establishment of these living labs. First, we're committed to gender transformative approach, so putting a lot of attention on gender equality and social inclusion. And second, we emphasize its co-production of knowledge. Everybody, as you were saying, everybody has right? So here is the right to contribute their knowledge. We want to harvest the value of different bodies of knowledges because it can improve the quality of the innovation and create stronger ownership, which is very important to our living labs. And we're looking for co-benefits contributing to the real convention. So local collaborators may have livelihoods, poverty, food security as top of their agenda. However, we also want these living labs to also contribute co-benefits, such as low-emission development, biodiversity. And the last principle is that these living labs should be sustainable and supportive, should have sustainable and supportive governance, such as multi-stakeholder platforms or multi-stakeholder processes. So yes, you mentioned multi-level government, Alexander. Here I would like to talk about multi-stakeholder processes a little bit in the context of Living Lab. Because food system transformation is a multi-dimensional process, concerns various types of stakeholders, and the transformation requires a space where stakeholders engage in a process of social learning, share the vision and goals. And it is a challenge to meaningfully engage all these stakeholders in decision making, in trust building, addressing power imbalance issues. So we have been working with our partners to develop strategies. We use research to identify factors, conditions important for these multi-stakeholder platforms to be effective. And we're also designing new research across multiple project sites to collect common variables.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. I have also pointing out bringing people in the center, and you call it living labs. So I have a concrete question. I know that Vietnam has just or has launched its pathway for food system implementation. Is it something where maybe your multi-stakeholder process or could be implemented? Are you working with the Vietnam ministry in applying this methodology for the implementation?
At this stage, I'm not sure we're super tied to that recent transformation strategy yet, but in the Mekong Delta region, yes, we are doing this. We're starting with engagement with national, subnational policymaker government officials, because there was a recent government change, so that delayed our process. And closely working with universities to build capacity research, awareness about this approach we're proposing to collaborate with them. And the idea is to co-identify a living lab site. So we don't want to make that decision ourselves. We want to have this participator approach to get everybody on board to select a site. So this sounds like a very good approach because the government is already interested in supporting this with or without our fund resource. Yeah. So initial progress.
Very good. I think it's more or less than trigger the government to work towards this direction.
Yes.
From the science getting to the member state, Rafael, you're in Brazil. And Brazil has recently reactivated an inclusive governance body, CONSEA. Could you explain a little bit more what it is and how it works on the ground, and how this could be support governance structure and policy on food systems? Oh, we can't hear you. Look, maybe you're muted.
How about now? Can you hear me well?
Yes, perfect.
Great. So, bom dia, good morning, greetings from Brazil. Thanks everyone for the invitation. Martina Fleckstein, thank you very much for delivering the question here. And also I would like to thank Alex and Miller for the great keynote speaker. And I would like also to thank and to congratulate all panelists that are here today sharing with me. And coming back strictly to your question, Martina, looking into our CONSEA, which is one experience of governance around our food systems here in Brazil. And I'm happy to share how it works and how it is entitled. So the CONSEA, which is our Brazilian, the National Council around Food Security and Nutrition, it was first established around the 20s, so in 2004, and even before, in considering different aspects. This is the council, the principal council to look into the public policy making around food systems and food security. So it has been established and it has been functioning in Brazil for decades. Unfortunately, in the past, times here in Brazil, it was eliminated. So the CONSEA was eliminated from the public policy making. But in the beginning of this year, in 2023, it was reestablished. And from the governmental level, but as well as from the civil society, we consider that it's vital for the public policy making and for the governance around food security and nutrition that we are talking here today. So this council is composed from 1/3 of all delegates and representatives from the executive, so from representatives from different ministries. One of the ministries is here with us, the Ministry of Social Development, Family, and Fight Against Hunger. And it is composed by representatives from 24 other ministries here in Brazil, from the structure that we called Kaizen, which is the interministerial chamber uniting all ministries from Brazil, look into food systems and to the food systems governance, coming from different lands and with all the perspectives. So 1/3 of this council composed by the executive from the government. This is the representations, and 2/3 from this council is composed by civil society organizations, considering representatives from grassroots movements, from civil society, from all kinds of knowledge, considering as well as the production side, the family agriculture, organic and agroecological production, human rights movements, gender equality movements. So this is one of the experiences that we consider very positive, and we were able to help Brazil in other times to think, to fight hunger and inequalities, as well as to promote sustainable food systems. So this council it works as a consultative council to the presidents of the republic. So there's a group of work from different perspectives in the Conselho body, and Conselho it's also linked to this what we have here called CISAM, which is our food security systems that it's responsible to look all over Brazil and to implement measures on how to identify, how to promote, how to monitor the food insecurity states all over Brazil, as well as looking into all the public policy making to try to fight the food insecurity, as well as to promote a huge variety of measures and actions to look into the food security and food systems. On specifically on Conselho, and this is I think the last part of this block of the conversation, but I would like also to mention that Conselho it's delivering at this point. Tomorrow we will start. Actually, it's today. We have an event starting today as well. But from next Monday to next Thursday, we are having what we call the National Conference of Food Security and Nutrition in Brazil. So the Conselho is the council entitled to all delegates from Brazil. So the conference gets more than 2,000 delegates from the Brazilian governmental representatives from all states and municipalities in Brazil, as well as the civil society organization. So the opening ceremony will be on Tuesday with our current president, President Lula, who was in person in COP, taking some discussions. So this is to give also a sense on how Conselho works. So coming from the national conference that we are having next week, it will come a political letter and 50 recommendations for the government to implement public policies looking specifically into food systems, food security and nutrition, as well as to address how to produce and consume food in a sustainable manner.
Thank you. It sounds like already an implementation of a multi-stakeholder platform. In Brazil, I have one question which maybe I've overheard. You said it's 1/3 are interministerial structures, which is great because then you have already this cross-ministerial participation. 1/3 is civil society. What is the third part? Sorry. It's civil society, interministerial people, and
So this is the composition. It's 1/3 from the ministries and 2/3 from civil society.
Okay.
So
2/3. Okay, that's great. Yeah.
2/3. Yeah.
And is there any recommendation you would like to give to other member states, just to copy and paste, or maybe something where you say, oh, I would improve, or maybe this are the lessons learned we need to change? Maybe very short, 1 or 2 sentences.
Yes, sure. So what we feel is that this kind of governance it works because it brings together and gives voices to the civil society organizations that sometimes are underrepresented in the public policy making. From our side, the policymakers, it also works because the grassroots movements they face in their field needs and how the public policy should get to these places. So this is one of recommendation from our side, copy and paste. But as well as it is important to advance, especially looking into I think sustainability and climate change, which is what we are talking here, and bringing the academy as well is of vital importance. Knowledge and experiences. So in 1 or 2 sentences, this is how, and
Okay.
let's collaborate as well.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. And Nicole, you have listened to the 2 examples, and also what's your experience? I know that IBIS Food also has brought in a lot of thoughts on governance structure during the UN Food System Summit. But what are examples of international collaboration that enhance inclusive governance for food systems?
Thank you, Martina, and thank you everyone for letting me join you virtually in the room from Brussels. I think this question is very important, and Alexander started to get at why. He mentioned at the very end of his intervention that there are several vested interests in food systems. And we at IPES Food are very concerned about the state of global food system governance because the battle for inclusive food system governance is an uphill battle. Right now, decision-making about food systems has been increasingly captured by corporate interests. And in a report we released earlier this year called Who's Tipping the Scales?, we track the growing influence of transnational corporations in decision-making about food. And we document the many strategies that they employ, from public-private partnerships to lobbying to revolving doors between public and private positions of leadership, which have really resulted in a normalization of transnational corporations holding a central role in determining the future of food systems. And this isn't actually just a problem of food systems. This is a problem of global governance in general. We can just look at the COP where you're at right now and look at the president who extracts oil and gas for a living. That is a serious conflict of interest, and it's really directly impacted the scale of oil and gas lobbyists at COP. Right now, there are 4 times as many oil and gas lobbyists at COP this year than last year's COP. And lobbyists from industrial agriculture are also out in force, really at an unprecedented scale. 100 of which, 100 delegates, are actually flying under the banner of country delegations, which gives them privileged access to diplomatic negotiations. So again, this is giving corporate influence an outsized influence in public decision-making about food. Now, there are some international collaborations that have enhanced inclusive food system governance. And one example that I'd like to point out is the Nyaleni process, the international movement for food sovereignty. Nyaleni became this political platform for food sovereignty, the food sovereignty movement globally. And the gathering started in 2007. They bring together a broad range of global food system actors from people's movements, social movements, and civil society organizations to share knowledge and build strategies to advance food sovereignty, land rights, agroecology, and the rights of small-scale food producers. The Nyaleni processes have been really influential in creating strong positions on global food governance, including the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of land, fisheries, and forests. And the Nyaleni process helped support the adoption and observance of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants. Nyaleni is really a crucial forum for inclusive food system governance, but it's not given the recognition it deserves. So just to conclude here, if we want to achieve inclusive human rights-based food governance, then we really need to start by addressing the influence of corporations on decision-making, and then work to democratize decision-making spaces to serve the public interest, with mechanisms in particular to allow for those most impacted by hunger and on the front lines of climate change to authentically participate in these decision-making spaces.
Thank you, and thank you also for your critical voice. And I totally agree. We have to be very careful to see who is in the room, and very often the badges don't show the real organization who is behind. So that's a little bit really. And also here in Dubai, there's a lot happening outside the blue zone. That's where also, for example, the green zone looks like a trade fair. So it's different to the years before, and it's really interesting also for those here in the room who haven't been in the green zone to walk through and to a little bit look what's happening there. It's interesting to see how there is influence from the big private sector, from the corporate. The second, I have a question. So you said the International Food Sovereignty Group didn't get enough recognition. What could be done to give them or to give this group more recognition?
So I think Alexander was getting at this point earlier too. So we do have the Committee on World Food Security and the CSIPM, the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples mechanism within it. A lot of the demands from the Nyaleni process are followed through this mechanism. And this space, the Committee on World Food Security, should really become the central space where we're tackling food crises, be they climate, biodiversity related, hunger related. And that's not the case. Really, increasingly, we're finding these discussions taking place in informal fora or on the sidelines of the climate COP, for example. So really, we need to give more strength to the CFS and the CSIPM mechanisms, the civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism within it, because this is where civil society meets, as Alexander was saying, the duty bearers, our national governments who have a duty to uphold the right to food.
Thank you. Manuel, now you're coming from an environmental NGO, and we know that food systems are a huge driver for biodiversity loss, deforestation, land conversion, pesticides, etc. How can, from your perspective and what you have heard so far, how can governance frameworks also contribute to conservation efforts, maybe from your perspective from Argentina?
Thank you, Martina. It's a real pleasure to be here sharing the panel with the panelists. Actually, I think that maybe I could tell you about our own experience promoting governance schemes, mainly through the participatory process with several platforms. Fundación Vida Silvestre Argentina is the partner organization of the WWF in Argentina, and we start our show 47 years before. And I think that in the last 25 years, we are working very strongly trying to build governance between sectors. Initially, we started at the beginning of the 2000 with the FAC, and after that, we moved to the MSC, the marine issues, and after that, we create we promote the Roundtable to Responsible Soy. all of this scheme of participation try to bring all of the actors to discuss about solutions, and obviously demands a lot of governance exercise and commit. And now we are promoting two specific alliances. I have my pins. I had a lot of pins. I have my pins of the Alliance for Climate Action and the Argentinian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and maybe I had some time to get more experience, more details about that. But I think that to try to summarize or pathway in that issue, I bring to, maybe it's not a correct appreciation, but I bring a very old African proverb that, if I am not wrong, it say that if you want to be fast, go alone, but if you want to be far away, share the journey. And I see that it is the challenge. Sometimes it's kind of process imply a lot of time, imply a lot of discussions. It's not easy to get all people involved in the same objective. Maybe we have the same goal, but the objectives and the expectations and the times are very different, and the agendas. And the another issue is when we are working in governance process and we have money, it's a problem. You don't have money, it's a problem, but when you have money, it's another problem, because you introduce another topic to discuss into the governance processes. And thinking specifically in the Roundtable for Sustainable Soy in Argentina, Argentinian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, sorry, I am mixing the strategies. Recently, I appoint and I win in election the position of the vice president of its initiative, and I bring its detail because it's not less important that in this kind of processes, power is one of the points of negotiation. And when you try to bring people that came from several sectors, you need to try to keep some power position to try to mobilize the initiative for the side that you are interested in. Obviously, the idea is that all of us go entry in the governance process with the best attitude to build the common objectives, but it is frequently not working when business and interests are really, really strong and it's putting on the table. In the case of the Argentinian Roundtable Sustainable Beef, we are more than 40 members from the whole supply chain of the beef in our country, from the producers to the exporters, and in the middle, transport and all of the frigoríficos. Sorry, in English, I don't remember the name. But after several years of work, we already had some specific indicators for sustainability. And only to remark that its indicators apply to animal health and welfare, efficiency and innovation, people and community, natural resources, and food. I see that was a great advance in its kind of process when we need to discuss, we need to fight something about a specific topic to put into the table. But I see that the result until now is a good result. Obviously, we are interested to be so faster or move forward to a more ambition commit. But I think that now its scheme regarding specifically about beef get us the opportunity to be more prepared for the next challenge that we have in the food system, mainly with all of I heard and I participate in discussion about the necessity to change the food system in the future for tackle the real issue of the climate change.
Thank you also for making the bridge to biodiversity and to your work on the sustainable livestock. And I know that you also do a lot on grassland restoration, working with rangers in this multi-stakeholder platform. So as always, or I don't know why, but we're running out of time. Your input was very, very good. But I have one last question, a very short answer to everybody. We are here at the COP. We have 2 days left. We know there is Emirates Leaders Declaration, 150 member states. What is your recommendation considering governments? What would you give as an advice for those who have to implement this Leaders Declaration? And really a very short Twitter style, or however it's called, X style answer. Would you like to start, Wei?
Yes, thank you for the question. That's an interesting one. So I think for CGIAR, which is publicly funded agricultural food system research organization, we also need to change the way we work and shifting away from the top down, the technology development, dissemination, hoping things will be scaled up, which rarely happens, to more of a collaborative, co-development, participatory approach, and it has to be demand-driven. We have our expertise, for example, on gender disaggregated research, modeling, and rigorous impact evaluation. We have a lot to offer, but to make sure what we do is useful and can be taken up, has to be demand-driven.
Thank you. So taking back away from top-down and a collaborative approach. Raphael, your recommendations.
Well, thank you very much. And I do agree that collaboration and strengthening cooperation, it's vital for this. And I have to say that from the place where I'm speaking this year, I'm at the government right now, and I do agree with what Alex stated in the beginning. I think this is a consensus. Nicole mentioned as well. The states have the obligation to assure the human right to food to all. So I think this is also a recommendation for governments, and this I include ourselves here in Brazil, how to best address and make food affordable for all, but as well as inserting the dimension of inequalities, of food insecurity, but bringing to the table how to make this process inclusive and giving the answers and that we need to shape food systems and better tune food systems to deliver health to everyone, to assure a human right to food to everyone, but as well as to promote sustainable practices so that the food systems deliver also sustainability. So this is the challenge for us. The recommendation is we have to bring all the actors together with shared responsibilities.
Thank you. Thank you for emphasizing also the human right for food and the inclusiveness. Nicole, your recommendations.
Yeah, I would say it's a great first step to sign an international treaty like the Emirates Declaration for Food System Transformation. That means that countries are talking the talk, but they need to also walk the walk. The hard work really lies in implementing action, getting resources to the places that they need to be, identifying damaging policies and reforming them, and really empowering local communities and championing and supporting the work that they do. That's walking the walk, and that still remains to be seen.
Thank you. So actions on the ground, we need implementation. And to you, Manuel, the last word.
Yes, thank you. Actually, obviously, we celebrate the declaration and we signed the non-state actor declaration that supports the official declaration. But in the same way that Nicole, I think that it's important to move to action. When I arrived to the WF Pavilion, I changed my bell budget for the budget the bell that say it's not we have no time for false solutions. I think that it's important declarations. It's important to be the result of the declaration. Obviously, it is not mandatory, but when we fulfill the commit to sign the non-state actor, we write down our commit, our interest, or activities. I think that we need to monitoring and to if not to punish, but maybe to share or get support to the implementation of the commits that all of the signatories write down in its declaration.
Thank you. So I have already got a sign. We have to finalize. I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank Alexander, and it would be great really to follow up on this multi-level governance system for food system transformation. I think this is more than urgent. Thanks for Raphael, for Nicole being online on a Sunday. Thanks a lot, and thanks for my panelists here. And I wish you all a nice, relaxing rest day, and cross fingers that we will get food systems in the outcome of the global stocktake. And I know the consultation is now, and also have and see a strong message on food system transformation in the final decision of the COP. So looking forward for the next 2 days, and thanks a lot again for your
Thank you, Veronica.
participation.